Roy, thank you for those kind words of introduction. It is both humbling and challenging to try to offer any public words, given the power and the horror of the images that we've seen repeated before this meeting today that were previously broadcast by Channel 4. They are a salutary reminder to all of us of the scale of the suffering and the horrors that were inflicted even in the final days of the terrible conflict in 2009. It challenges all of us as politicians as to how best to respond to acts of unconscionable violence. Let me, however, begin by echoing the words that Roy offered of thanks and appreciation to this organisation for the work that you have done in giving voice to the concern of a community and to publicising and amplifying the need for international action in the face of the evidence that has emerged. And incidentally, let me also pay tribute to Channel 4. We have seen the very worst of British journalism in recent months. What we've just seen on that television screen should be a powerful reminder to all of us of the importance of the best of British journalism, without fear or favour speaking up and allowing the evidence to speak for itself. There's really only 4 points that I would make briefly, reflecting where we find ourselves after 2009. Firstly, the issue of the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission. When I first took this job, I wanted to both hear the concerns but to assess the evidence. I wasn't keen to take a view the day after appointment as to the suitability of the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission. I wanted to talk to my colleague Emma Reynolds, who, as you know, is leading for us on the issue of Sri Lanka within the team, and to assess what we judged to be the potential for the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission to be able to do the task that we saw it as requiring, which was not simply to address the issue of the ceasefire, but the issue of human rights, as was spoken to so eloquently in the film. The concerns that we feel today are profound, whether in relation to the issue of witness protection and the capacity of people to be able in any circumstances to give authentic testimony as to their own experience and that of their community before such a panel. Secondly, given the chair of the Commission, the impossibility of it to be judged to be a genuinely neutral body in assessing what evidence even is presented to it in those circumstances. And thirdly, the underlying issue as to the accountability of the Commission. And that's why I feel it is right, and after discussions with colleagues in the Shadow Front Bench team, to say we are not convinced that this Commission can do its work even with international participation. And there does need to be an international commission that looks into the evidence that has been broadcast by Channel 4 and that demands answers even many months after the instance that we have witnessed. The second issue that I want to speak to is the role of the Human Rights Commission. Frankly, I am disappointed that it has not judged the need to go further than the steps that are already taken. With my own experience previously in the Foreign Office, I am not naive as to the position that the Chinese and the Russians have adopted within the United Nations on these issues, but nonetheless I do think that there is very real concern as to the continued delaying of dealing with the issues that have been brought before the Human Rights Commission of the United Nations. But thirdly, the reason I think there is a pressing need for action is not simply past wrongs, but present concerns as to what is happening. As we gather here today, we are still unclear in terms of the so-called resettlement policy of the IDPs on the island as to whether human rights are in any way capable of being upheld. We are still in a position where there are up to 3,000 ex-combatants who we know include people who were not themselves fighters but were clerks, secretaries, clerical workers, working previously within administrations, and there are deep and searching questions that need to be answered by the government of Sri Lanka in terms of the treatment of who they describe as ex-combatants. And finally, there are very real concerns in relation to the continuing allegations of people literally disappearing who are willing to speak out about present injustices. So I would like to say that I come today with a message of hope, but I come with a message of deep concern, not just about what has happened, but what is continuing to happen, even many months after the conflict. The final point that I want to make today is to say that we will continue with the many people in Parliament, not just Siobhan and Andy, but many representatives who are here today and have previously expressed the concerns of their constituents about what is happening, to give voice to these concerns in Westminster. And as testimony and I hope confirmation of that concern and that commitment, I want you to know that I am going to ensure that we today contact William Hague's office in relation to the decision of the UK Borders Agency to send back 50 people to the island. Now, I cannot, and I'll be honest with you, vouch for these individuals, their individual circumstances, but I can absolutely vouch for the fact that we need to be clear that the British government has done its job in ensuring that these people are not going to be subjected to torture if they are deported from the United Kingdom. And in that sense, I will be today seeking assurances from William Hague that he has personally looked at the matter and is convinced that human rights are not going to be abused and torture is not going to be perpetrated as a result of the decision that has been taken for individuals to be returned. So I give you my word that there is a real and genuine concern, which I know so many of us in this room feel in light of the evidence that has emerged. There is a continuing determination to do what we can to give voice to that concern, but also to hold the British government to account in ensuring that it upholds its responsibilities. The primary responsibility, of course, rests with the Sri Lankan government, but that does not diminish the responsibility on the British government and indeed on all of us to ensure that we are in a position where if harms are going to be perpetrated, they are avoided, and where harms have taken place, they be investigated and the perpetrators of that violence face justice.